Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of People Talk. We should be live. I'm just going to keep letting people into the room now. Um, Surprise, surprise, we almost have a full house of people trying to get into the room. Yeah, George, we can see you now, so thank you for that. Welcome. Hopefully, you guys have had a good week. Um, it's been a strange week, but I think saying it's been a strange week is not going to be important anymore because every week since March has been a strange one, and I'm not quite sure it's about to change. Um, wow, recapping the week. I don't know what to say. Recapping the week is not impossible. It's just that some strange things happened this week. The week before when I spoke to you guys, we our session was on sexual abuse and abuse generally in our community, and lo and behold, what did we get this week? We got another very massive just talk about Christine Bond. Could you please mute yourself? We got a very um, big bit of just more excitement. I'm just going to call it. We had some major hype about abuse again in our community, and I think what I found strange about that is that even in 2020, we still have this inability just to call a spade a spade. You know, and I guess when the first video on this whole thing came out, everybody was very clear. The guy's this, the guy's that. Then he put out some stuff, and all of a sudden, some people just started to shift. Some people started to say, well, maybe, and then I started to hear a very common phrase which you hear in these things, which is, oh, they both need help. And I'm like, yeah, but no. Yeah, of course. We all need help in different ways and bits and pieces, and that's never going to change. But it's very surprising to see that people feel there's some sort of justification and there can be some sort of medium balance. My comment was very, very simple, very much a one-line comment. The moment he took the action of going public with some of the personal things, for me, it was all over. It was no longer a matter of, let's consider the options. No, 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 you lose it. I don't think there's a man or a woman alive on this call today who hasn't themselves gone through things which they would consider to be hurtful, really, really harsh. But doesn't mean it doesn't mean that people, guys, some of you are unmuted and you got music on in the background. Let me just do a quick thing here. Everybody should be muted, please. Thank you. Yeah, so we have the situation. We have a situation where even to this day, people are still not sure of what is the right protocol, what is the right way for things to be, and I just can't see any sort of get out clause for that. But that's one thing. For those of you who have time, I just came off a fantastic show that Eddie Nestor had. The No Joke show, which starts at midday and goes before this one. This week, it was absolutely awesome. Absolutely a stunning show, which is
ladies and gentlemen,
the easiest way to put it.
Today's Connect One class.
I'm hearing someone broadcasting a Connect One class. Please, the very least you could do is mute yourself. Thank you. So, Eddie's show today was about many things, but one of the primary topics that he spoke about was about county lines. And I'll just say this about the show. Whilst it was a great show, I was stunned, absolutely stunned, at the amount of people who were very clearly unaware of what was going on in terms of county lines, had no idea. And these are, obviously concerned parents, and they were really, really worried because they'd never heard of this. They were saying, this is all news to them. And Donna Murray Turner, one of the people who was on the show, she made this comment about being an involved parent, and that's what we've got to be. We can't allow these things to get away from us, and for us to always be playing catch up when it comes to what's happening in the lives of our children. Because if we do, the streets are just going to gobble them up, and there are bad people out there just waiting for our children to be vulnerable and to be available to them for that sort of behavior. And they are absolutely chewing it up. And we need to be more careful and more involved and access these things. If I ask people what's British Got Talent all about, everybody knows. Everybody knows these things, but we don't know about this thing that's a major impact on our children. That's not going to fly. Yeah, it's not going to fly, because at the end of the day, our children are not brought here by their own doing. It's by us who decide to bring them here, and we have a duty of care over them. But that's my whatever for the day. Leslie said she didn't know about Eddie's show. Eddie's show is on at midday every single Sunday, just like mine. Eddie, myself, and Sherry Dixon both had an agreement to try and put these shows together at different times of the day on a Sunday to bring a range of topics. And so, Leslie, do check out Eddie's show via Facebook if you want. However, we are gathered here today for a very, very, very different reason. I've been doing the show for a while, and today's topic has been long in coming. It's been long in coming. It's something that, in different ways and shapes and form, people have asked me about doing many, many, many times. I'm not going to say I've been reluctant to do it, but it has been difficult to find, and I'm going to use a phrase which somebody inboxed me the other day, men with sufficient testicular fortitude to come on the show and handle this topic. Now, midweek, it dawned on me that probably I was not best equipped to lead on this topic. And I put a call out for someone of the opposite sex. I was going to say fairer sex, but I don't want the feminists attacking me. Not today. It's too soon in the day. The opposite sex to join me to create some sort of balance. And I didn't want someone who was always on the show, because we kind of get that. I wanted someone who was coming in fresh, just wanted to do something, just wanted to have a say. And it turns out that a young lady, I'm calling her a young lady, I'm assuming she's a young lady because you ladies, we don't know how old you are, and we're too polite to ask. And so I'd like everybody to welcome Celestina. Please unmute yourself and say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, Celestina has joined me. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her background and hopefully what she brings to the topic.
Hi, everyone. I'm CEO and psychotherapist at Floating Counseling. So I'm a psychotherapist. So I'm coming in fresh-eyed. Of course, I'm a female, so I'm going to be coming from a female perspective, but I'm also coming from a psychotherapist perspective. So trying to be non-judgmental, even though I'm female. So that's what I'm bringing to you guys today.
Okay, thank you, Celestina. But it would be wrong of me not to introduce you to another young lady who's on the call, because I have decided, I haven't spoken to her manager yet, I've decided to make her my resident mental person who looks deeper into these things, simply because she's contributed so many times to the show, and her contributions are always brilliant. She knows who she is. She's already unmuted. Please say hi.
Hi, my name is Shireen, and I'm a psychotherapist.
Yeah, guys, so you see what you're up against. 2 psychotherapists, 2 ladies, and that. Okay, now look, let's be crystal clear. I've seen some of the chats that have come up when I raise this topic, and there are some people who a little bit angry about where we're going to go. And, you know, they've made their minds up. That's not the type of show we have. The show we have here today is that we want to hear what these guys are saying. Look, I'm happy to share my experiences, but only from if someone asks me directly. That is not my role today. If someone asks me a direct question, I may be inclined to answer. For you guys out there in the world, no one has blocked your videos, guys. All your videos should be working. So Yvonne, I don't know why I don't have the ability to block your video. No one else has complained from that, so I don't know what's going on there. And I just want everybody to be aware that the best way to communicate with us, and you know, hi to the people who are watching this in YouTube, the best way to communicate with us is via the chat. Everybody who's on the Zoom, here are the rules. The rules have always been the same. For the first section of the show, I allow only the people I've invited on the panel to unmute themselves. We've already seen what the crosstalk and what the noise in the background brings. But that's for the first part of the show. You have a facility in your Zoom which allows you to raise your hand. Please do so. If you have a question, type it into the Zoom. If it's such a question that you absolutely need to be unmuted, I will unmute people to allow them to do that. Yep. Let me just double check into the Zoom because I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, thank you, Dina, for telling people where stuff is. And let's crack on because the gentleman and the lady have joined earlier, and you know, it's time to get going. So the question, and let me introduce my gentlemen in the order in which they joined. I'd like to introduce you a guy who's been on the show a couple of times. I'd like to call him a regular contributor to the show. Unmute yourself and say hi, Tony Harrison. We start with Tony H.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tony Harrison. Grateful, Paul, for giving me an opportunity to be on the show. Don't know if I'll be saying that at the end of the show, but at this stage, I'm definitely grateful. Why am I here? I'm here because I think it's a great subject to discuss, and I hope that we can discuss it as opposed to talk over it. I run a personal development training company, so I spend a lot of time looking at ways of improving lifestyle. So that's my angle. That's where I come from. That's who I am.
Thank you very much, Tony. You know, Tony and I go way back. We've ran businesses together. We've been colleagues in the 100 Black Men of London, but that's all the responsibility I take for him. Beyond that, he's on his own. The next gentleman is a gentleman I've also worked with as well, funny enough, but again in a different capacity. And we're going to call him Tony P. Yep. Tony C, Tony B, which one? Tony, you want to unmute yourself and say hi?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Cox. You can call me Tony C. You should know that by now, Paul. So my day job is an educator and mentor. I work within Prus. Interesting, you made a comment about county lines earlier today. There's a lot of parents who are unable to do the things that you ask because they quite simply are not doing the things that parents do, and it's their children that are generally the ones that are running in the county lines. But yeah, thanks for inviting me along. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, like Tony said, I don't know if you'll be looking forward to it in an hour or two. And last but not least, another gentleman that I happen to know, and that's George. George, do you want to unmute yourself and say hi, please?
Hi, yeah, hello everyone. I'm George Linton Salmon. I've done some work with Paul before. I mean, I did run some personal development programs for young people, which we did some work on some years ago, and been involved in social commentary for quite some years now. Now, I also foster. Now, if I can just touch on the county lines thing, an interesting thing, about 2 years ago, we were in some training. I think there were about 40 people in the training. Most of them were, 99% were Black women. And the question came up as part of the training was, what is county lines? And if I remember rightly, most all of them did not know. Yeah, I think it was at least 80% of the people thought it was like a postcode, differentiating between districts, which is quite scary considering the problem we had, amongst our young people. So that's the point there. So yeah, I also am working for a charity at the moment which supports some elderly Jamaicans, just part of the Windrush generation, really. So that's me.
All right, look, thank you, George. Yeah, me and George did some work and presentation skills for some young people up in the distant north of London. So welcome to the show. Okay, look, let's get right into it. So one of the first questions that someone suggested I ask is for us to try and understand, what do we mean when we say commit? Yeah? What do we mean when we say commit? Tony C, let's start with you. What do you mean? What do you interpret when someone says commit when it comes to relationships? Are you talking commit to one woman, which I guess is the ideal? Does it mean marriage? Yeah. What does commit mean?
Okay, so this is an interesting conversation because I also take part in a relationship development talk every Tuesday evening from 10 till midnight called After Dark Talks with Yvonne Michelle, which takes place here on YouTube and Facebook on the MediaNet Live platform. And we recently talked about the difference between a booty call, a friend with benefits, and a date. And a commitment, basically, to me, based on our lengthy conversation on those three elements, is when you say to somebody, this is my partner, this is my man, or this is my woman. That is your commitment when you say that this person is different to when you say, this is the guy that I occasionally go to when I need a little bit of an itch scratching. Yeah, the booty call or the friend with benefits, which are terms which are commonly used in society nowadays. The further element of commitment would be engagement, and the furthest would be marriage. That's how I break it down.
So we're talking levels. We're talking levels. Tony H, what's yours? Disagree? Agree? Commit. What does it mean to you? And wherever you are, you might want to unmute because I can't hear you.
Go. I'm here.
Yeah, good. What does commit mean to you?
Well, I'm glad you said to me, because I think the first thing that we could all do well to understand is that the interpretation of commitment can mean different things to different people. And that may be where a lot of the conversation actually starts and stems from. But to me, commitment is to accept an agreement with somebody. Commitment is to be obligated to somebody. And I took the liberty to just look up what a dictionary says about commitment. And what it said...
Is that how we're rolling this week? Scientific?
We're not rolling scientific, we're just putting it out there because I'm sure the conversation will take over. But commitment apparently is being dedicated for a cause. Yeah, that's one definition. But then I was very intrigued with another definition, which sat straight underneath it. Commitment is an obligation that restricts freedom of actions. So I just thought that was really interesting. I just thought I'd put that one out there.
No. You can't drop that and then back off. You can't drop that and back off. No.
So here's the thing, because that is very interesting. Like, first and foremostly, right, would anybody disagree with commitment being dedicated for a cause? What that means is a person, right, has an intention to stay committed to whatever that is. So we're talking about relationships. An individual who's committed has an intention to stay dedicated to that relationship.
Okay, right? we can live with that one.
No, but hang on, Paul. I can be committed to a booty call. I can be committed to a friend with benefits. That is not the same definition.
But the thing is,
George, I want to hear from George.
Right.
Lord God, the man have a pile of paper.
Well, you know what? It depends on a lot of things. For example, time. If we talk about maturity, as we know, women, they mature far younger than we do. Yeah. Now, to me, what I see is that as I've grown older, I've understood what commitment is more. That's a good thing. It's time. That's an interesting thing. Now, for a woman now, if you used to say to a girl of, say, 18, 19, what's commitment? They'll probably just say something like, well, finding a husband, getting married, and having a family. Yeah. You say to a young man, what's commitment? The mindset then is not chatting up another girl while his woman's around.
Is that while she's around, or
while his woman's around, not chatting up another girl while his woman or girlfriend's around? Yeah.
Okay, while she's standing there.
Yeah. So I think for women, they look at commitment more relationship-wise. Yeah. Where for men, it's more of what's in it for me thing, if that makes sense. You see, like more on an individual level.
So it's funny listening to you guys, because I had a bit of a crosstalk with someone about this, and I suddenly realized that I'm tremendously old school, yeah, and I'm probably pretty antiquated, because I'm surprised at what you guys have just said, because for me, the only thing that I got from that, which kind of works in my head, and we're talking about relationships, we're talking about man-woman relationships. So for me, it begins with, you make a decision that this is the only woman you are going to date, that she's the only one. But you do that because you intend to marry her.
Well,
So those are the only two levels that are going through my head.
But it doesn't practically work like that for everyone. It doesn't practically work that way. If it did, we'd all be happily married.
Paul's sounding very antiquated with that statement.
You see, right? It doesn't practically work that way. I think this is a point where you could ask, say, a female, what does it mean to her? Yeah. Okay.
I think with all of you men, all of you actually have a different understanding of what commitment means to each of you, even all three of you. So,
Yes.
Then having the woman come in, that can get a little bit complicated, because I think it also matters what their background has been, how they were raised, and of course their age.
Which was my point is time as well. Yeah.
Because so Celestina, you're a woman.
Yes.
And I'm not asking you to speak on womankind, on behalf of womankind. I can see in the chat that womankind are pretty able to do so themselves. But within your head, what does commitment mean in this discussion? What does it mean? What does a woman think it means? What do you think it means?
I think commitment from myself and for the women that I know, commitment means he's going to be your only one. So, you're not expecting to walk down the road and see him holding hands or kissing up with somebody else. Commitment means you're only going to date him, he's only going to date you, or, and then potentially you guys can then live together, get married, whatever it may be. But for a woman's perspective, from my perspective and the women that I know, commitment means it's only you two. You're planning something. You don't know you may not know what it may be for the future, but you're planning to be together for now. Alone, no one else coming in.
So avoiding the fact that, we can always enter into something. And this is where my headspace is. And George, do come in. Mm-hmm. Where my headspace is, we start the day, but we must be starting with this goal in mind. We're adults. We know it don't always work out. Yeah, I get that. But we must have a goal in mind. Right. And the goal that I'm putting forward, and I'll let George speak now, is one woman, married. George.
Okay. Well, if the two young ladies are putting after me because they're involved in a professional way, they'll see relationships breaking up all the time. And one of the main things is the problem with commitment. Now, I think from experience and from talking to women as well, commitment, I've not heard a different thing from any woman as regards what that means. And that is commitment from a man. This is my man. This is where we're going forward. Now, let's say, for example, two people meet, Paul, a man and a woman. They go out for a date. Mary likes Pete, yes? She's really happy, goes home the next day, called her friend. I've met people, went out last night, great date. She's planning to see him again. She's already thinking of commitment, yeah? Pete, for a lot of men, that was a date, yeah? And now you guys can tell me if you think different from a man's point of view. Most men, they went out, they had a drink with Mary. They're not thinking, a man usually isn't thinking straight away of commitment.
I want to jump in if I can.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm listening to all of this, and I think one thing is fundamentally clear, just in this very short segment that we've been in, is that even though the overall understanding of commitment may be similar for a lot of people, the detail of what commitment is very different. Exactly. So before anybody can start talking about what commitment is, right, or if anyone can start deciding what commitment is, there needs to be a conversation, right, between the two people involved in terms of what that means to each other. Right. Because unless there's clarity at that very beginning point, right, the chances of understanding what commitment is and the behavior in commitment can be very different. If that communication does not take place, then somebody is going to get upset, hurt, or very frustrated.
Exactly, yeah. And if I can throw, maybe the psychologist can throw in a little bit here as well, because once again, from things I've seen, at the beginning of relationships, once again, I'll say, and I'd love if the ladies can talk to me, they meet someone, they start to have a relationship, they assume the man feels the same way, thinks the same way, and there's a commitment going on, yeah? I think with men, they usually need to be told. They need to, as you're saying, Tone, they need to have that conversation, if I'm making sense there, yeah? So,
I think what you're saying has some validity. A lot of the words in the chat that I'm seeing in the chat, both in Zoom and over in YouTube, are saying that there needs to be this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not doubting that it's both for men and women that we need to have this conversation.
Paul, if I may jump in very briefly. So this is a generational thing. Most of the women and men in this conversation are of an age. I know we do have some youngers in, but I believe that people do not understand having that pre-relationship conversation until they're well into their 40s and 50s as a minimum. Yeah. People in 20s, 30s do not know the concept of having a pre-relationship conversation about what is expected of you sexually, what is expected of you financially, what is expected of you emotionally, what are my goals for the next 20, 30, 40 years, etc. These conversations do not happen in 20s and 30s. I know ideally we would like them to happen, but generally they don't happen. But when you get to 40 and 50, that's when these conversations suddenly make sense.
Exactly. Tony, can I just say on that?
Hold on, let's hear what Celestina wants to say, then we come back to Tony.
Yeah, I was going to say, why do you think that some people are waiting till 50s? I mean, I disagree. I don't think women are really waiting till 50. I think from maybe when you're in your teens, you're not really thinking of that conversation. But when you're in your 20s, I mean, I'm African, and when you're about 25, we expect your parents expect you to be married. So from when you're 19, when you're 20, whoever you're dating, in your mind, you know your parents want you to get married in the next 4 or 5 years. So you're going to be having that conversation of, so what do you want to do for your life? What job career do you want to do? What are you going to be living? You're already thinking of that conversation because
I understand that from an Afrocentric perspective, but do you at the same time have the same conversation about what am I expecting sexually of you for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Because I'm sure that part of the conversation doesn't come in. And that's a very fundamental part of what men looking for.
Exactly.
When Tony, you that conversation, are you talking about how many times do you want to be having sex per week?
Exactly. Exactly that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Celestine,
one time a month will work for me.
Now, Celestine, that's a really good point, because that ties into some of the things I was trying to say, in that from a female perspective, that's earlier. I don't know if the guys will admit to this. I can remember back to my late teens, early 20s with girlfriends who were ready to have a commitment. I was totally ignorant to it. Yeah. Now, is that because of the male-female difference? Because as men, we mature later. Yeah. Because that conversation, I did want to have it, but not at the age where I found a lot of girlfriends did in my early 20s.
Can I ask a quick question across the board? Tony C, have you ever been married?
I've been married twice, Paul.
What age were you when you married first time?
I married first at 30 and I married second at 40.
George, ever been married?
No. I'm engaged
Tony-
to be bad now.
Engaged to be married now?
Yeah.
Well done, my brother. Big things. Big things. Tony H, ever been married?
Yes, I have.
What age were you when you get married first time?
The only time, let's be clear.
Oh,
Right.
all right. All right.
I got married at the age of 20, right? It lasted for 10 years.
Okay. I'll declare my hand. I got married when I was 25. Yep. The reason why I asked that question is because we're all from different backgrounds. I didn't grow up in the UK. I know Tony H did. I know George did. I know Tony C didn't. Yeah. But we all married relatively early based upon this conversation where we're saying
Too early.
Well, that's another thing. But I want to move to Shireen very quickly so I can move the conversation on. Shireen, you had a comment.
Yes, I had a comment which I agree that it is about being on the same page in terms of commitment. However, it also makes a difference depending on the upbringing you've had or the experience you've had in other relationships previously. If those things needs to be balanced. And another thing is you have to be both on the same page. If one of you are running away when you're looking at commitment and another one wants to stay, then that is not a forum to actually have some sort of union. So it's important to choose people who have a similar mindset to you.
Two quick comments from the chat. One, which I think is very important, from Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn. Thanks for joining us today. And Marilyn says that she was obviously having this conversation with this gentleman, and he felt that the expectation of communication was too much to ask. Yeah. But more importantly than that comment is Tony C, there's a proposition of marriage if you simply shake your locks one more time. Yeah? Just one more time. Yeah.
Could it be so simple? Could it really be so simple?
But on that point about what it would take, what in your guys, each of you, what are two reasons why you have personally been reluctant to commit? Let's be honest here. What two reasons where you've been going out with someone, you've been dating for quote unquote a while, whether it's a day or 10 months, and you know that, guys, we know probably before we say I don't want to see you no more, we know this ain't going nowhere.
Okay, can I answer that question, Paul? But before
of course you can.
But before I do answer that question, I want to go back to the point around the conversation that doesn't happen quite often, and so the commitments are not understood. And we spoke about it taking place with older people because they're from a different generation from younger. I would suggest that when that conversation doesn't take place, or there isn't some level of understanding at an earlier stage of life, those individuals run the risk of having traumatic, uncomfortable, hurtful relationships, which then leaves scars, leaves triggers, and leave, I suppose, emotions that affect future relationships. And so those future relationships, right, potentially don't have the commitment that they would have wanted because of the damage that happened in the earlier days. So the earlier that the conversation happens is the less damage that occurs to people, which means commitment doesn't become so difficult. So I say that to then go on to say some of the reasons why I have been in relationships and not committed. My first, and I think my most absolute reason, is I got married too young. I got married at the age of 20. Right? I had zero life experience, but the environment that I was brought up in, right, kind of like suggested that that was the right thing to do. And being a good church boy as I was at the time, right, I done the right thing and I got married. Yeah, I got married not having a clue what marriage meant. My first reality strike, right, was actually in marriage people have children, but I'm not even ready to have children. So why am I even married? right? And, you know, the reality started to like hit me. I then started to go out and start to understand what it was to be a young man, a young 20-something man, right? Experiencing life really for the first time. And I have to tell you, I can be honest on this forum, that I've done all the things that a married man shouldn't do because I'd never done them before, yeah? In doing that, the obvious is going to happen. The relationship's not going to work. The relationship falls down. But then I had to undo all of that. I had to understand what the hell did I do over those last 10 years to create this mess. And so during that time, my ability to be committed to somebody again was like zero. Because I was scared of making the same mistakes again, because I didn't know how I made those mistakes in the beginning. I needed to learn a lot more about myself. And so therefore, committing, right, wasn't something I was prepared to do for fear of doing the same wrongs again to somebody else.
That's a big one. Tony C, 2 reasons. 1 or 2, doesn't have to be 2 reasons
Well,
why.
Paul, I think I don't fall into that category because I clearly show that I am willing to commit, having married not once but twice. I'm 52 now, so I'm only 3 years out of my last marriage.
So you've never dated someone and realized you don't want to commit to them.
Of course, loads of times.
What were the reasons?
Part of the dating process is you're trying to find if you and that person can continue a relationship without having arguments and being on the same page, having the same likes and dislikes, being tolerant to people's foibles. You know, there's so many things in dating, which is a time-sensitive thing. It might take you 6 months to learn that this is the person of your dreams. It might take you 8 years. These things are personal to individuals. The willingness to commit is when you find out that, you know what, I want to be exclusive to this one person and continue to develop this relationship until we get to engagement and potentially marriage. But, you know, listen, there's no I don't have an unwillingness to commit, so I can't really answer that question.
All right, George.
Yeah.
George, and we're going to keep reminding you that you're now engaged. So throughout the whole show.
No, listen.
Time too, George.
No, listen. It was good that I was last because I had time to really think back. And to be honest, I really was never frightened. I mean, I was engaged before, and I'm not here to dog anyone, but I wasn't frightened of getting engaged to be married. It didn't work out. But what's a couple of points I think you made, Tony, and also Shireen said, there are triggers as well. So the things I learned from that first marriage or engagement not happening did instill a bit of fear in me, but it's not stopped me wanting to try again. One thing I wanted to throw in there again, which we've not touched on, we're talking about commitment, is learned behaviour as well. Now, if you're a young person, for example, who you're in a home where, say, for example, your father's always dogged, always bad things are said about him, you're told you're the same as your father, you may not feel worthy. You may find yourself in a situation where you've got a woman who wants to marry you, yeah? And you know, without going into a long thing, I've spoken to people where this has happened, where they've not felt worthy. So the person, the relationship's fallen apart, someone's gone off and think this man can't commit. And it's not because he can't commit, he's frightened of committing. He doesn't think he's worthy of making that relationship successful. And I think there's probably a lot of that that's gone on out there.
You know what, guys, I'm going to share a little story with you all, because to be quite honest, I hear you. And I'm getting what you're saying. Back in the day when, you know, I was in my, late 20s, I was here in the UK. There was a group of us who used to go out together, a group of guys, probably about 6 or 7 of us, all of us from Jamaica. We were all from Jamaica. We met up at a little club called Rumours in Brixton.
Oh, yes.
And that used to be our Friday night hangout. We were there so often that we called it church. Yeah. So that's how often we went to Rumours. We were always there. I won't call his name, even though he knows himself and he knows it's true. And we laugh about it all the time. One of the guys, we gave him the annual Dog of the Year award 2 years running. Yeah. 2 years running. This guy, even 1 year, his leg was broken. And that didn't stop. And I'm going to just say it, his body count. It never stopped it. Anyway, one day we all as a group went to a barbecue, and he had obviously seen this young lady before. And he said to us, I'm going to marry that lady. And we all kind of laughed and said, oh, yeah, whatever. You know, we know you better than that. I can tell you now, it's 2020. So they have now probably been married for 20 odd years. Yeah. And to my knowledge, and you can't ever vouch for people 100%, but to my knowledge, this guy has never looked at another woman. Never. And I challenge anybody to say otherwise. Yeah. And the reason why that story has always been so poignant to me is that the day before he saw her and he made that comment, I'm pretty sure if he had said to someone, hey, look, I'm not afraid to commit, they would have said, nah, man, you're a player, you're a this, you ain't ever going to change, you're going to be like this forever. But he saw her, he had obviously had conversations with her before, he had that frame, and he instantly committed himself to the relationship. And the subtext to that is that when she came into our circle, that early dating sort of situation, she was abundantly aware of his reputation. And she said one thing to him: don't try that with me. The rest of the story is history. They have children who are now grown, out getting married themselves. That's how this guy has rolled. And so when I hear people say we're not afraid to commit, that's the first myth I want to kill. Yeah, it's the first myth I want to kill. Celestina, tell me, is it that we just need to meet the right woman? Is there a right woman out there for us, or am I just blowing smoke?
I think there is. I don't think there's a right person for anyone. I think, every relationship needs developing. Every relationship is gonna, hit rock and bottom. They're gonna have their own issues. But I have heard numerous stories quite similar to the one you just told of. As soon as he saw her, he was like, she's gonna be my wife. And that was just it. And he just kind of went there. And I just think a lot of the time, women, we kind of need to, we're not that straightforward and so sure, so straight away. So when I heard Tony Cox say, it might take 8 years, I'm like, why would it take 8 years for you to know you're going to commit to this person? Every relationship is going to have disagreements. Every relationship is going to have its up and down. If you're looking for that person that you're not going to have argument with, you're not going to have disagreement with, then I'm going to say you just need to sit yourself in your house and just let every woman you get with say, I'm not going to commit to you, because you're never going to find that person you're never going to have a disagreement with.
So I think it's starting to look to me that it's about us maturing, and it's about us starting to realize things like there is no such thing as the perfect person. Yeah, there is no such thing as the perfect relationship. So it's got to be about us finding someone who every single day we at least want to try for tomorrow.
Yes.
Oh, can I just jump in very quickly to Celestine's point? I understand that you could make a decision quicker than 8 years. However, the reason I married at 20 and the reason I married at 30 and then 40, so I didn't get married until 30. But the reason is I was a different person completely from the age of 20 to when I hit 30. I was an even more completely different person from the age of 30 to the age of 40. It takes time for you to understand and unravel a person's character. Yeah? Do not believe that the person you marry at age 25, and I'm sure Tony Harrison will agree, when he hit 35, he was a different man. Yeah? George, I don't know what age you are, but the age you are now, 10 years from now, you'll probably be a different person. Every person has to understand that they will change. If two people change in opposing directions, guess what happens at the end of 10 years? They decide this ain't the same as when we started. And therefore, it's time to part and move on.
So what about
I'm 60 next month, so we're on the same page, man.
Don't tell
let me
anybody you're
share a bit of
60
my
next month. That's
story.
not true. Go, Celestina.
So let me just share a bit of my story. So I knew my husband from when we were in secondary school. So we were 11 years old when we both first met each other. We started dating in college, so about 18. I'm in my 30s. I'm in my middle 30s. So I'm definitely not the same person I was when I was 18 or when I was even 11 years old. I'm not even the same person I was last year. However, the point of marriage and commitment is to keep having that conversation and relearning each other. So when you make commitment to someone, for example, my children are not the same as they were last year. The personality develop and change. It doesn't mean I no longer care for them. It doesn't mean I'm like, you know what, this behavior is out of order. That's it. I'm abandoned. You just keep relearning. You have to make that commitment to yourself and to the other person that you're going to keep relearning each other because you're going to change. Absolutely. We change every day. The other person is changing. But when you start pulling apart, I think that's when therapy can help because, you know, you don't
Without
need
a shadow of a doubt,
different.
I totally agree with you. And I actually believe that couples should get therapy before they get married. Because quite frankly, my relationships in my marriages would have been completely different had I had that conversation with somebody prior to making that commitment. And I think most often it's down to your parents to educate you in a certain way. But quite often, you know, listen, we look at our parents from the Caribbean, we look at our parents from Africa, they're going to shape the way we form relationships. And can see Celestina's quite clearly had a defined understanding of what is expected of you as an adult. That's a very African tradition. You know, you have a very strong traditional makeup of the family unit. Yeah. We don't have that in certain diaspora countries. And that's why we see these huge differentials in divorce rate and separation and even attitude to family.
You know what? I'm going to throw something in that's in the YouTube feed. So in the YouTube feed, someone touched on that very point. They were asking the question, is it that we raise our boys with different expectations of relationships than we raise our girls?
Yeah, there's two things. Can I just say, Tony, I mean, I agree with that. The two most important jobs we have in life, raising children and relationships, are the two things we hardly get. It's only of late, I think, they've started to educate the kids at school with. That's absolutely right. One conversation which maybe comes before all of that is the physiological conversation, which Sharon can maybe understand more, is that, and you're talking about boys and girls now. Now, as men, I don't, this is shaky ground now. I don't know.
Sorry, you're not in a studio. They can't find you where you are.
You know, we're made basically not to be monogamous, but we have a fully formed frontal lobe, so we can make that decision to do the right thing, So I think, especially with men, we do definitely need that education. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, like a man could, if you take it back basically, back to when men were fighting for their food, you go out hunting, a lot of men will get killed, so there's less men around and more women. So it made sense for a man to have 20, 30 women. Yeah. The other way around, it doesn't physiologically work.
Someone has already said that's a very stereotypical comment.
But it's more like an observation. So what I'm trying to say is where we are now, yes, we are able to make that choice, but we need also education as well, because I think he was going on about the African family being something that they grow with. In some other parts of the diaspora where there's been more, broken and destroyed families, it's not so. So it appears that education, yes, is what we're saying is probably needing more.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you. It's education. It depends on the family and the culture that you come from. Because my husband is half Black American and half Jamaican. So his culture and everyone in his family, marriage means nothing to them. Marriage is something they've never heard of. I mean, he was 25. We were 25 because we were 25. We were 25 when we got married. And my family was like, oh, that's a bit late. That's what, 20, you've been together for so long. His family was like, you're young, what you doing? So I think it definitely depends on culture. I mean, his mom was like, you guys better not have children and expect me to look after your children. So it's just that mindset of that family. That's just where he comes from. And that was very different from my family. And I have 4 brothers, and every single one of them are married before they have children.
And Marilyn, please type your comment. Please type your comment that you're going to make us fall off the chair, please. We want to hear it. Sheree, you were going to say?
Yeah, I think I kind of feel as though it depends on the generation and the family you come from. Because regardless of being from the West Indies, there are certain families who believe that you should be married. It is something that is required of you before you have children, whereas there are other families that are different. But also, if you grew up in an abusive environment, there are times when you meet someone, and if they have suffered a different kind of abuse, you guys may not know how to handle that as a unit. But I agree with what has been said about therapy prior, because you can understand how to manage certain disagreements in the process of knowing each other. But also somebody on the chat spoke about love languages and the fact that what we require as individuals are very personal to us. And so we need to choose people who can work in line with what we require as a person. Another thing I wanted to say is that the way dating works now, everything is here and now. And what we find as well is that there are times when there are so many options, it is hard for someone to say, okay, I will make a decision about this, because relationships is about weighing up things. Is it worth it? Is it not? So that is the crux of it. And in terms of commitment, it requires investment. It doesn't have to mean marriage all immediately, but when you are investing in the relationship and the other person is investing in the relationship, then the idea is that those investments will reap its rewards.
Tony H, too much options. Come on, talk to me, brother. Too much options.
It's true. Well, depending on the type of person that you are, it could be considered that there are so many options, so you pick, right? But at the end of the day, everybody who's had a happy relationship or even a successful relationship, they understand that moment when they realize, yeah, I can get with this. This person is making me happy. I like my space. Yeah. Now, in that moment, it doesn't mean that things won't happen that could potentially cause problems in the relationship, but you got to remember those good times to overcome the bad times. Right. My thing is this: whether we've got too much options or not, there are some situations, this comes down to the whole thing of like, why don't men commit? I'm going to throw this out there. Why don't some women just accept the man's clear message that he's not going to commit and leave him? Why are we in there trying to get this man who's clearly showing that he's not going to commit? Why are we trying to get him to commit? He's made his position clear, right? By staying and trying to change something which he's quite certain about, you're causing yourself a lot of harm and building this story that men, plural, don't commit, when it's just a case of this man doesn't commit.
But sometimes I think for the women, the message isn't clear, Tone, which is what I was trying to say before. I think this is just the way I've seen things. I think some women, they assume, because they're assuming, and we're not giving that message, you think you're giving them that message, yeah? You know, for example, I only see you once a week or whatever, you know, I'm not really interested. And the fact that you're seeing them once a week, maybe they're getting that message. I don't say, can he see me once a week? That's commitment. So I look at it as maybe a communication thing.
But I'm going to bring it always back to the whole thing about communication, because if we spent less time looking at all the lovey-dovey stuff and had some kind of like real conversations, I don't mean like deep stuff where you've got to sit down for 5 hours, even though they do happen as well. But if you're just communicating with each other, you're sharing information, which is the bedrock of any successful relationship, you're going to soon understand whether you're pulling in the same direction or not in the same direction. Yes, men lie, but guess what? Women lie as well. People lie, so they're going to mislead. And in those situations, I'm sorry for anybody who has that experience. But once you realize you're having that experience, then you have a decision to make. Do you stay with it or do you leave it?
I don't want to jump on the back of that and just say, sorry, quickly, with relation to the men that don't want to commit and the women trying to build them up, the same works the other way around. Because some men will stick with a woman and they don't, then they're trying to build this woman into something.
Don't want to know.
They should never have done that.
Indeed.
You know what? This is a question I want to do, because I have accepted that I am old-fashioned. and I have no concept of what's going on. No, I do. I have to accept that because I always thought, and again, maybe it's how I was raised. Yeah. And I'm not talking about how I was raised deliberately by, say, my mom and dad, but the environment I was in. I didn't know that you had the right to live with a woman forever. I didn't know that that was a doable thing. I didn't know that that was acceptable, that you could. I remember this very famous, I got chopped out of this Facebook group for this because one lady was saying she and her partner have been together for something like 15 years and they don't live in the same house. And I said, well, naively, but you're not together. Yeah. And that's when I started to get re-educated in this whole thing where there are people who are in what they call, and they're sure, committed relationships. They don't live together. She has her cat. He has his brethren them down the pub. And, you know, they don't meet. They don't think. Now, for me, and for people who think like me, that's not a relationship. That's not going anywhere. And I understand that I am old-fashioned. I understand that I am narrow. I understand that I'm very weird. Yep. But I've been in relationships where 3 years in, and I say to the young lady, what we doing? And she says, about what? And I'm like, well, you know, I live in the deep south. You live in the grim north. We got to sort something out. And her comment was, why are you rushing? I'm talking 3 years in. Now, the only response from me was, bye. It's done. Yeah. And I know there are people thinking, boy, Paul, that's harsh. But that's the way I was socialized. So I do want to bring to the table this concept that it does matter about what we consider commitment. Yeah. And when we approach ladies, we have to be conscious that there are different things that they expect, that they require, that makes it a true relationship for them. Whether it's the basic stuff about, have I met your friends? Whether it's the basic stuff about, do we holiday together? Whether it's the very basic stuff like, hell, do we live together? And if we're not fulfilling these roles, if we're not communicating on certain levels, if you
that
are
applies
not
the other way, Paul. That applies, you know, listen, if you're going to go out with me, you got to understand, I'm going to go to boxing matches both nationally and internationally. I'm going to watch football on a Sunday. I'm going to watch NFL on a Sunday night. I'm going to go to live music concerts regularly because I love live music. I love my Caribbean food. I love this, that, and the other. All these things. The woman has to understand the same things.
Right, totally. And this is the thing. And this is the thing. There's many women can't understand why men, they will love their football team. They'll show more commitment to their football team and nearly religious fervor, yes, to a football team. They'll nearly want to hang themselves if their team loses.
Are you talking about Arsenal?
And then second,
Are you talking about Arsenal again, George? Is that Arsenal again, George?
If they're playing later on, so hurry up and done.
Look,
but you see what I mean, though? That's a very good point you made there, because we don't understand it.
But somebody is in the chat. Somebody's in the chat making an observation, which I'm going to give Tony C an opportunity to come back on. So the observation was, I. Where's the we?
Okay, so let me break that one down. So in the After Dark show that I do on a Tuesday night, which is, I think, 30.
This advert has not been sanctioned.
All right, sorry. But listen, we talked about what does a woman want from a man and what does a man want from a woman. And I can tell you something for nothing. Most women had a list as long as my arm. He has to do this, he has to have that, he has to do this, he has to have that, he has to have that. There was a long list for the women. When it came to the men had like about 5 or 6 things, and that was it.
We are simple creatures, aren't we?
We are simple creatures.
We are simple creatures. Feed us, and we're happy.
There you go.
But guys,
Coming at from a perspective.
All right, Celestina. Now let's hear from Celestina because we want to hear this one. And by the way, Tony, Dina has withdrawn her proposal.
Yo, Your list was too long for her, Tony. Your list was too long for her. I think women have long lists, but I think most of our lists are the same things. So we will say things like, you know, it needs to be able to understand me, hear me, be compassionate, be empathetic. To me, that's all the same thing. Just be a nice person to me. Literally on our list is just literally respect me, love me, the end. Be there for me.
So no, I need to drill down on that a little bit more. I need to drill down that a little bit more because from a male perspective, I got to be honest, that's not what we see. So when and guys, back me on this one, Shereen.
Yes, sir. You got my backing.
Yeah. When and again, maybe it's about the society, maybe it's how we're socialized. But when as a man, you're thinking about stepping to a woman, I gotta tell you, empathy and those are there. But we're also thinking, can I represent myself financially? Yeah. Can I represent myself socially? Yeah. Can I represent? Am I articulate? Yeah. We're not talking about the little road man who stepped to you and cocky. I'm talking about a guy who's thinking, you know what? Actually, I want to take this woman to the next level. So you're starting to think, am I financially able to run this? And I'm not talking about financially able to support her. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about financially able to present myself in a way that makes her see this as an uplifting experience. Yeah, because the bottom line is, especially if you're of a certain age, myself included, and we've been through a divorce can strip you down. It can strip you down to your very bears. And as a man, the side that we don't talk about a lot is how a lot of our men in their 40s and 50s who've gone through long-term relationships, they've been stripped down, and now they're back out in the world. They're 55, 56. They're decent men, they're hard-working men, but financially, they're broke.
But then, Paul, also, what some of the things you pointed out there takes you back to maybe a different conversation. There's a lot of men, they're not raised to be someone's husband. A lot of men, a lot of boys, they're raised to look for another mother in some instances. So there's the other conversation there. That some of the men don't think they're worthy. They don't think they're able. Yeah, they could be bringing home 50,000 a year. They don't think they're able to look after a woman for some of the reasons, as Tony said, when they hear these lists as long as the sky. Yeah, so there's a dichotomy there as well, you know.
I think as well, right, in this situation, we're getting some things backwards, or we're kind of like running before we can actually walk. How can we actually be in a situation where we are discussing commitment, yeah, when we haven't even had a conversation about compatibility? If you're not going to accept that Tony Cox watches his football, does his boxing, internationally does his boxing, NFL, etc., she should know all of this, or the partner should know all of this before there's even a talk about commitment.
Simple answer.
So let me finish it. So if you're not clear on the compatibility of each other, you shouldn't even be considering a conversation about commitment with each other. You've got to get the things in the right order.
And a simple answer there, which we're all the time. And I've had this conversation with many women who've had disastrous relationships. And when they tell you the details, you say, hang on a second, this guy was like this when you met him. Yes. Well, why did you stay with him? I thought he would change.
Well, come on. Now you're talking about, you're talking about what the real problem is. And this is why I said, if you find a man who's commitment shy, then why are you staying with that person? You can't expect him to change just because you want him to change. But for me, the real matter with all of this, right, no matter how much we talk about commitment, right, you got to go back to effective communication. And if you're not doing the effective communication, like, your commitment, right, is at risk. I'm not saying it's going to go wrong, but it is at risk.
So on the topic of compatibility, on the topic of compatibility, I'm going to come to you in a second, Shereen. On the topic of compatibility, someone mentioned in the chat the book, The 5 Love Languages. Yeah. And I'll say this, that book literally changed my life. Yeah. I was out of a 13-year relationship, and I went into horrible man mode for 18 months. I don't know where it was, but I stumbled on the book, The 5 Love Languages. It is was it you?
Yes, it was.
Oh, thank you. It remains the only book that I have read in one sitting. Yeah. To this day, it is the only book I have ever read in a single sitting, and it absolutely changed my life. And the reason why it changed my life is exactly what Tony H and George are talking about. It started to talk to me about compatibility, but it did it from an angle which I could appreciate, which was about satisfying my needs. Yeah, and it may sound selfish to some, but if you read the book, you start to understand that what you're looking for in a partner, and this is not selfish, is someone who satisfies your needs and you satisfy theirs.
Yeah, and educate. And another one I'd put forward, the same as you, but mine was Why Men Lie and Women Cry. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read that. Why Men Lie and Women Cry.
No, I'll have to go and get it. Shireen, you were going to say.
Yeah.
I think compatibility, that is definitely a conversation. I agree with Tony, that should be had from the beginning, in terms of things that you like, etc. But what I'm noticing is that basically in relationships, you both should be able to grow. It shouldn't be a situation where you feel you have to relinquish, barring stuff that creates disrespect in the relationship. You shouldn't have to relinquish what makes you happy in order to grow within a relationship. In fact, a relationship is where you learn how to grow as an individual. The issue is that you may not have the same values. The same value system needs to be in place. So I once again agree with Tony in saying, if someone steps to you and say, I do not want a commitment, and that is not your value system, you need to walk away. We cannot change individuals if that is not what they want.
Look, guys, quickly, we've already gone past 3 o'clock. And for those who are regulars on the show, you'll know that that means nothing. All it means is that I might decide to cut the feed to YouTube. So I'm giving the people in YouTube ample warning. We're on the cusp of cutting the feed to YouTube so that we can start to have the questions from the people who have joined us on Zoom. Just so you know, 70 people are already in the Zoom. Only 30 more spaces. Last week when we did a topic on sexual abuse, the Zoom was full and people were complaining that they couldn't get in. Aside from George, who has to go watch Arsenal lose, no one has said to me that they have any commitments outside. So the guys are going to hang around for a little bit longer. While you make your mind up to transition over to Zoom, I just want to remind you that there's a thing called Christmas, which is coming up soon. And I am going to have my last show for 2020 on the 20th of December. Yep. I've already had confirmation from Mr. Eddie Nestor, MBE, that he will be joining the show. And Sherry Dixon, who's down in Ghana, they'll be joining the show. And I'll be inviting back some of the people who've joined the show over the months. But before the 20th, on the 13th, we're going to revisit the topic on sexual abuse. Now, this is not to repeat the topic, but this is to answer some questions which were asked after the video that we did, which has been my most successful show, quite frankly, even though I have a suspicion this one might eclipse that. And what we're going to try and do is talk more about solutions. Because on the show, the nature of the show last time, it was a lot about listening to people, hearing some of their experiences, understanding that this is something that impacts in our community. But what we weren't able to do, we weren't able to spend a lot of time signposting people who may be in the middle of such an event to the places where help is. So that's what we're going to be doing on the 13th. On the 20th, I'm going to turn the tables on Eddie and have a bit of a year in review with him and Sherry, and we're going to chat about stuff like that. So just remember, the 13th, we're revisiting sexual abuse in the community, but with a focus on what you can do about it. And then on 20th, the last one for the year will be just a general chit chat. I don't even think I'll even bother to mute people. I just want us to chill out and spend a little time. And then I'll look to return in the new year. We just go for it in the new year. We start again. Also on the 20th, we have Angela Ma, who is having an audience with Angela Ma. About a week or two ago, she had a fantastic program where she interviewed 3 incredible Black women who had broken through glass ceilings in their chosen professions. And it was a sellout show. if you can sell out something on Zoom, which you can. So she's having an audience with Angie on the 20th. So please go to justtickets.com and book your tickets for that. And that same night, at the same time, there's also a fundraiser. Now, the fundraiser is for people who have been left homeless or had their property destroyed in Jamaica due to the floods. I don't know if there's anybody who's not aware of the level of flood damage that took place in Jamaica, but absolutely, we're going to try and do a bit of a fundraiser. A whole range of artists have put their backing behind this. It's virtual, it's online. Look, it's not about how great the technical sound sounds. It's about people giving what they can to support people who have lost their homes and lost their property in Jamaica. Again, the tickets are available on Just Tickets. You can give via the Just Tickets by booking a ticket. We're going to be contributing to the event by waiving most of our booking fee. And it's an opportunity for people just to get behind those great causes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can see George rubbing his hands and getting himself ready for the next part. If you're in Zoom already and you want to say something directly to anyone, now would be the time to lift your hand. Please, I'm going to allow you guys the opportunity to unmute yourselves, everybody. However, if you know you have a noisy background, then please keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question directly. So we've talked a lot, I think, about bits and pieces around this. And I'm going to try and summarize what we've discussed so far. Yeah, and please, guys, all pitch in. I can see Marilyn's already raised her hand, and that's great. Men can commit, can't we? We can.
Yes.
And we do. Yeah. But there's a lot more going on. And it is about compatibility. It is about the luck of finding someone with whom you are compatible. And when we do find that someone, we step up. Yeah. I'm just unmuted Marilyn. Marilyn, you had your hand up very quickly. Out the gates, please speak.
I just want to say, number one, thank you for the conversation. Always good conversation to have. Number two, seriously, I nearly wrote a post today to Eddie Nessa saying I've loved your shows and I need a solution.
It was a great show, wasn't it?
I definitely want one where we come together and we talk about how do we solve the issues that they've been raising. So fantastic for doing that. Now to today's conversation. One of the questions I've often have myself and from my clients is with regards to men. If they know that they do not want to commit in terms of what that then means to both parties who are having that conversation, why don't they just be upfront and say it? Because that would save, I think, a lot of angst and problems. And number two, when they have messed someone about and they've been found out and it's all over and we decide to step them to the curb, do men actually care, or is our perception correct that they just move on to the next target and kind of dust their hands? So I'd really love to hear the male perspective on what's going on in their head. Is it just that they just want to play the game for as long as they can? And do they care about the aftermath that they potentially leave women with?
It's funny that was something that came up in one of the chats today, where someone was saying that sometimes when it comes to men, there's a certain energy around the chase. There's a certain energy around that opening gambit that men are attracted to. We like the vibe, the adrenaline rush of, that new conquest, that new person. And maybe, I don't know, you all can speak for yourselves, Tony, and George. Maybe that's why we're able to move on fast to the next, because we're going to revisit that adrenaline rush of that new thing. Tony C, what do you say?
Yeah, so this is an obvious answer for me. The obvious answer is women are emotional creatures, men are logical creatures. The logic of staying with a woman over expected period of time doesn't make any sense. Whereas a woman becomes emotionally involved very quickly in comparison to a man. So there's your reason. Simple as plain.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a fear of confrontation.
George, we need to get the bodyguards over to Tony C's house, because I'm not sure he's gonna make it through the week.
I think there's that fear of confrontation as well, because I think the question level, you don't want this. Why don't you say something? I think there's a fear of confrontation. A lot of men, they're aware that a woman is investing in them. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of embarrassment there as well, because this is something that happens quite often. Yeah. So from my point of view, I think and if I put my hands up as well, in the past, I think I've been maybe guilty of that myself. Yeah. That fear of that confrontation has made things go on for far longer than it should have.
Absolutely. I'll nod to that as well. Yeah.
I'll say
very often, the ability to just say, look, Marilyn, this is not working. You're fired, has been so slow in coming that it causes overlap. It causes all sorts of misplaced expectations. You're absolutely right there, Joe. Tony Harrison.
Yeah, I was going to say, I say it differently. I think that there are situations exactly which has just been spoken about, but I'm going to keep it real. When some guys are in it just for the chase, and when the chase is over, bang, they're gone. They don't even remember what happened, right? They don't give no consideration. They've gone. They've moved on to the next because that's their game. That's what they do. So there's not in their eyes, what I would describe as selfish, manipulative, narcissistic eyes, right? That's okay, right? Because the next person they go on to, they're as charming, they're as intellectual, they're as communicative, right? And it's like, oh my God, I've just hit the jackpot, until they lose interest again, and then they move on again, and they don't think about the damage which is gone, because that's not what they're about.
And can I just say that proves that thing about all men are the same isn't, and it's self-evident in that I hear exactly what you're saying, and when we see it, we're horrified. It's like, what are you doing, man? So we do recognise it, we do see it happen, and all men don't think that way. Yeah,
they do not.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to try to do something which I fail to do every single week, and she's laughing, so she knows what it is. Anne Maria.
Yeah, my question to the men is: in your opinion, do men check with their brethren, their friends, male friends, about whether they should commit into a relationship?
No.
Not
at all.
Never.
They got no input. They got no input.
What I think you're alluding to is that women's group where you get into a conversation and you discuss your partner and say, he's this and he's that. Should I stay with him? Men don't do that. We don't get involved in that.
No. We'll unload. Sorry, go on.
There may be some barbershop talk which starts with asking for a friend, but you're never going to ask for yourself.
Yeah, we'll unload a lot. We'll definitely unload a lot of stuff to us, to our friends. But no, we don't take on.
Celestina, you've been quiet for too long. Is that a failing on our part that we don't bring those things to our friends and ask for a wider opinion? Is that a failing?
I think it's the upbringing of the culture and the man. Because I think, a lot of men were raised to, one, don't cry, you're a boy, you're a man, stop crying. So expressing emotion is something that is quite hard for men. So being vulnerable to another man or a group of men as a man is something that you guys don't really do often. And it's just not what you guys do. Even confrontation, a lot of men don't necessarily like confrontation with each other or even anyone.
100%.
So I think that's why they run away from, why they run away from, they were kind of hint to a woman that I'm not interested. Like I think one of the Tonys said, I'm only with you one night. In a man's mind, that tells you I'm not committed to you. But to a woman, he's still coming around, he's still picking up your calls. So, I think men communicate things completely different to the way women do. And I think because of the way a lot of men have been raised, it's just the way they communicate is just not the same as we would expect. So I think it's just, men don't like confrontation. So you just kind of have to, if you do want them to have that, are we committed or not, have that conversation straight up and, just go with what he says, not what you think he's trying to say, but literally what he says.
So you guys just don't take hints then?
So can I just also say, Paul, I think there's this other element that women don't seem to understand. Where you're coming into a man's life, at what stage in his life can be so important. If I've just finished off a 16-year marriage and you come in 3-4 months later, I'm going to be in a different headspace. Yeah. So I'm saying, like, you're gonna ask the question, when was your last relationship? Oh, just finished with my wife, 16-year relationship 3 months ago. Well, guess what? The last thing I want to do is commit, because I'm thinking to myself, boy, I just need to get used to being with other people.
And I'd just like to let everybody listening to this show know that the views and opinions of my panelists are their own, and do not necessarily reflect the wider views of the population.
The other thing is, like, literally, oh, I forgot my point now.
Don't worry. Just shake your locks. Shake your locks. Dina's watching.
I hear what you're saying, though. Go on, Tony. You're back there now.
He still hasn't found it. Look,
you were talking about just coming out of a long relationship and then hearing somebody tell you about, like, you know, more commitment when you're just 3 months out.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, because I wanna pitch in on this. So the way you guys are talking, you're making it sound as if there is some sort of a fixed time after which a person, and in this case, men, are supposed to recover. Because I don't agree with that.
It's not even a fixed time. It's the intensity, Paul. It's the intensity. It seems to me, when a woman meets you, she likes you, she is full on, yeah? And you are naturally, you know, feeling this out, especially when you got your ex, you got your kids, yeah? Your ex wants money. There's a lot of stuff. You'd have moved out your house usually, because invariably when a relationship breaks down, it's us that lose out. We lose our house. We lose our kids. Yeah. And we've got all of that on our heads. You know, you meet someone, you like this new person, but you've got the world on your shoulders, yeah? But the woman, she wants everything. And, you know, and I think that's the area you're talking about.
That's right, George.
Okay, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to formally announce I'm going to cut the feed to YouTube now. It's been really great. I don't know why the northern people, hi Peter, hi Yvonne, I know you're all from way up the grim north, Yvonne Witter, you are talking to, you can't smile. Yeah. Peter Broderick, who for me is like my older brother. Peter used to cross me over the road, yeah, when I was just a little lad, and he was in a walking road. You can laugh. Yeah. So it's nice for you guys to join, but we're gonna cut the feed to YouTube now. For those of you on YouTube, I put in the chat several times how to bring yourself into this chat if you want to continue, because we're going to continue. I don't know why Peter is out in the car hiding.